Welcome to Women Insurepreneurs, the podcast empowering female insurance agents to thrive in the industry. Join us as we dive into the world of insurance entrepreneurship, share success stories, and provide invaluable insights through the lens of female entrepreneurship. Let's unleash the power of women in insurance together.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Women Insurepreneurs. We are so happy that you joined us for this episode. I'm very excited to introduce a very successful woman that we've been waiting to have her on. She is the epitome of woman entrepreneur. And I want to go ahead and just let Mina go ahead and introduce herself. And Mina, just tell us who you are and then tell us a little bit about yourself to our listeners.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Jackie and Sonia. Again, Mina Trujillo. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. Longtime entrepreneur with a lot of different background stories on each business. But my specific background is I'm an immigrant. I came here as the original dreamer child in the 70s. I came here illegally to the United States, and then my mom overstayed her passport, her visa. And then 4 years later, when I was about going to be 5, she sent to get me, and I crossed the border as an illegal child, and I landed in Highland Park. So I grew up in Highland Park, mind you, in the late 70s, mid 70s to late 70s, all the way to the 90s. I grew up in Highland Park, and at that time, you couldn't leave your house after like 3 o'clock. Highland Park was a very, very rough neighborhood, infested with gang violence and drugs, etc. So we lived there kind of like, in a way, I want to say ignorantly. we didn't really bad area, very bad town. My dad had a wonderful job. My mom stayed home. My dad had a very, very amazing job at Hughes Aircraft back in the day. That was like a major job for someone also who was illegal, because we were all illegal at that time. And then my dad made an excellent amount of money back in the 70s and early 80s. But unfortunately, in my culture, I'm Mexican, we didn't know how to save money. So we were always living paycheck to paycheck. And the check would arrive on a Friday, and by Wednesday of next week, we had already spent the whole thing. So we lived like that. I grew up like that. And then one of the really, I don't want to say dark, but very unique stories of my life is that I grew up where obviously there was a lot of drugs in our neighborhood, a lot of the homeboys from different gangs. My dad heard that you could make more money selling weed. So we started a weed business, and I was 10 years old, and I used to dispatch it, and back then, and it was, again, I grew up in a very nice home with very nice parents, but a lot of it was ignorance, highly ignorant. Like, that's not what, you don't let your child sell dimes, and so I always say, I kid that that's where my entrepreneurial spirit started. Sadly. But anyway, so but again, I grew up in a very nice home, but full of ignorance. You kind of just went to work and you spent your whole paycheck, and who knows about tomorrow. We'll figure it out. We'll figure out when the rent comes. Fast forward, I went to elementary to junior high and high school in Highland Park. But then when I got to high school, I was like, wait, there's gotta be a better way. Is this really how people live? Because I remember we would go to the grocery store and we had to decide between milk or orange juice. We couldn't buy both. And then right from where we lived, our cockroach infested apartment. I mean, it was really dreadful. Our apartment was dreadful, but it was, we made it pretty, like pink, like really bright yellow walls, the typical Mexican home. But from our apartment building, from the window, we could see downtown LA, the tall buildings. And I remember, and I don't know, I think I get this from my dad. My real dad passed away in Jalisco in an accident. So my mom remarried. So the man she remarried was a wonderful stepfather to me. But my mom lived. That's who I grew up with. But my family my father's side comes from a highly entrepreneurial family. But so I guess I have some of that DNA, but I really don't know what pushed me to kind of just start daydreaming when I would look out the window of our apartment and see the tall buildings in downtown LA. And during that time is when the library tower, which is the tallest one in downtown LA and the tallest one west of the Mississippi, it was going up. And I remember, and at that time, my mom had a job. She was a supervisor of a very, very high end jacket company in the garment district. And I remember we used to go pick her up, and I used to tell my dad, "Can we park in front of those buildings so I can look up?" And so we would always wait there until it was time to go get my mom 3 blocks down on 7th and Broadway. But and I think that kind of I always had that vision that I would work in that building one day. And so, and back then I never had any like, I want to own a business. It was mainly like, I want to work there. Like, that's where I want to work, in those buildings in downtown LA. And so that's when I was growing up, right? Fast forward, I become an adult. Obviously, we move out of Highland Park. And then that's when it started kind of just clicking in my mind that there's got to be a better life. Like, when we go to downtown, we see these people in suits. And how come in my town, everyone looks the way we look, like um, different? And how come our cars are different? And how come our homes are different? So I kind of, because I'm a why person, I always tell people I'm not smart, but I'm extremely curious. The
Mm-hmm.
most curious person you will ever meet. So I think I attribute most of my success to being curious and not smart. And so anyway, so fast forward, I was like, well, what do you do after high school? Like, I'm going to go talk to my counselor. And this was like maybe in my junior year. I was highly popular. I was the one in charge of all the parties. And they used to call me the general manager of our high school, of our crowd. And so, but I was like, I wasn't a great student because I was very, very friendly and very social. And where's the next party? And so that was more important than school, because I always got very bored with school. I'm a very creative person, not a textbook kind of person. So I always was very bored with anything that had to do like sitting there for hours and taking tests. But I also have a photographic memory, so I could take my tests, never study for them, and get A's.
Nice.
So anyway, long story short, I was like junior year, and I'm like, what do you do after high school? Because again, my parents were great, but completely out of the picture, like ignorant, like no guidance, no nothing. I also grew up during the middle 70s, mid 70s, early 80s, when the kids just played outside all night and walked home and everything. I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a latchkey kid, but it was kind of along the same lines. I used to play softball, and my parents never went to one game. They would drop us off. But it wasn't just my parents, it was all the girls. We would just get dropped off, and the games, there would be no one on the stands, no parent, zero. And so I think it was that era where kids just could go on their own and go to the neighbor's house and come back at 10 p.m. and ride bikes outside, and it was fine. So then, I kind of like get to junior year, and I'm like, what do you do after this? Like, I guess I have to go to college, right? So I started applying to college, and I get into almost every school I applied to. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to go to college because I don't want to be struggling in life. Like, I don't think this is normal. So that was the question, the consistent question that I needed answers for, but I didn't know, right? And so, long story short, I end up in college in a very prestigious women's university, Mount St. Mary's in LA. And I kind of did it all on my own. I filled out my own application. I went by myself to, the welcome day. I filled out my financial aid. I thought it was free. I didn't know. Like, I just filled out. They gave me financial aid. They gave me a grant. And I was like, oh, I'm going to Mount St. Mary's, and I got accepted to a lot of stuff. I also went to LMU for a very short time, but I was actually a working student because I had to obviously work. And so I kind of I moved around a little bit between Loyola Marymount, and then ended up at Mount St. Mary's and graduated from there.
Nice.
So
Oh, I
that's
mean,
kind of
and
in a nutshell, that's my background and how I got here. And yeah.
like I said, extremely
Nice.
interesting upbringing. I think like most of us, right? We were blessed to be able to still run around the streets in the '70s, right? Me, it was early '80s, because I don't think you're that much older than me, but me, it was early '80s.
Oh,
Um,
I'm probably way older than you.
but it's that freedom, right? The parents just let you do what you want. You actually got to play a sport. I didn't play a sport until I was in high school, so Not like when our kids were kids, but
Yeah, well, and I signed myself up. I remember my coach. I was about 10, so I would say elementary probably. That's when I was playing softball from like 10 to 14. So and I still remember her name because I don't forget faces or names. Miss Cabrera, she was my playground teacher at my elementary, and she says, "Do you want to play softball? I'm putting a girl team together," and that's how I, signed myself up.
nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Very independent, I see. And what is it that you currently do?
So there's a few things that I do now. I own two companies. One is a marketing and public relations firm agency. I mainly focus on capital markets, and I work with a lot of banking and private equity, investment banks. I also represent pretty big authors. Like anytime there's a politician or world leader or a CEO that has a press tour or releases a book, I typically represent them in their tours, in their book, in their press releases, in their communications, all of that stuff. So my marketing agency, I'm very specialized. I do a lot of, like I said, I do a lot of capital markets, and then I represent pretty big name speakers. I work with a lot of agencies that represent very big speakers as well. And then I do some consumer product marketing, which I'm kind of getting away from because I'm very busy with my other business, which is a tequila business. So I've been in the tequila business for about 13 years now, and I'm a fourth generation Jalisciense. So for the last, it's been actually about 12 years, in the going on 13 in the tequila business. And I started with an RTD, which is a ready to drink, a margarita. And it's been about, that one's been in the market for about 10 years. And about a year and a half ago, I decided to go into the ultra premium luxury segment. And so I own another brand now called Scorpio's Tequila. So there's two. It's Drago's Cantina, which is a RTD in a little box, like a wine in a box, same concept, but it's got a built-in salt container, and everything is extremely craft, made in Jalisco, so it's not agave wine or anything like that. It's 100% tequila. And so that's one brand, and the other one is an ultra premium luxury brand, which it's only been around for maybe like a year. But obviously I've been working on it because I have an extra añejo that's been aging for 5.5 years. But for the last year, Scorpios, it's actually going to be a year, not even a year. But Scorpios is been in the marketplace. I'm in about 6 states, Canada, and I'm going into Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Qatar, Spain, Portugal, and London in the next few months. And so I would say that in the last 8 months, 9 months, it's been an incredible journey with the ultra premium luxury brand. And so I dedicate a lot of my time. Typically, it was 80% on the marketing side, on the public relations agency, and the 20% over in my other business, the tequila business. But now the roles have switched, and I spend most of my business or my time now in the tequila business and 20% in the PR business. I also have staff that has been with me for like 10, 11 years since I started my agency. And so, I kind of hand off stuff there to them now and completely 100% trust them. And I come in on certain things or, to consult on certain projects. And the rest of my time, I would say I spend it now in the tequila business.
That's really impressive. And you know what? That's one thing that everybody that knows me, they know that I do not drink tequila. But for my daughter's 21st birthday,
Yeah.
I had to have a bottle of your
You bought the reposado.
yes, I bought the reposado to have for her 21st, right? If they were gonna have
That's
we were gonna have
amazing.
tequila there, it had to be the right one.
That's amazing.
So everybody was wild over it.
The
So
bottle, yeah. Well, it's a
yeah.
few things, right? I always say I would never sell anything I would not drink, so I don't do additives. We are a fourth generation family, so, and I'm born in Jalisco. So one of the things, my great grandfather, back in the early 1900s, he started planting agave, but agave takes minimum of 7 to 10 years to mature. And so he back then said, "There's no way I can feed all these 15 children." We come from a very big family on my dad's
Hmm.
side. And so he got out of the business and he started, we're a very, very celebrated, I don't like to use these big words, but celebrated agricultural family in Jalisco. So we own a lot of my family own a lot of the sugarcane fields and the berries and the avocados, and they
Nice.
export to the U.S. Yeah. And I
Nice.
went the other way, and I went back to where my great grandfather started.
Yeah, you went back to the
The
main
tequila
roots.
business. But before
Yeah.
that, I used to own a cosmetic company. So I'm on my
Yes.
fourth business.
Tell me
I
that
exited
story.
that business back in 2000. We're in 2024, right? But that business was extremely successful as well. I was in all the Macy's, New York, New Jersey, LA, California. So I was in about 5 states. And then the recession hit back in 2008,
Yeah.
and I had to do a fire sale. I still did okay, but not as much as I would. I mean, right now it would have been probably a $500 million business, but I grew it back before the internet, back before, not the internet, before Instagram,
Mm-hmm.
um, before all of that. And I started my business when Anastasia started, Too Faced, Tarte Cosmetics. I know all those people. NYX, NYX. She's a friend of mine. Anastasia is a friend of mine. So all those women, we kind of started in that same year. And I remember we used to help each other carry our stuff from our trunks into the makeup shows. It was a very small community back then, and it was everybody was just like coming out with these makeup brands when it was a time of Estee Lauder. They owned everything. They still do. But the Estee Lauder companies owns almost every single brand you see in Sephora, except the
Yeah.
small independent ones. But all the big brands in Macy's and all those big department stores, they're owned by Estee Lauder. So here we come along, this new crop of entrepreneurs in the beauty business, which was almost impossible back then because you had very, very little way to, you had to sell your stuff at Macy's to make it.
Yeah.
And it was also before the days of Sephora. But even then, when Sephora came along, I was still in the industry, in the beauty industry, and Sephora wouldn't even look at us. Like they were like, no way. And so, I exited that business in right during the recession. I did okay, but I was like, what do I do now? I mean, like, and then that's when I started my PR agency.
Nice. I mean, with all those expansions, right? With all the growth that you've had with different companies coming and going, what are the biggest lessons that you learned?
I think the main one is cash is king. You can't run a business without cash, like no matter what people tell you. The best analogy I can give someone is that running a business is like landing an airplane. If you don't know where the controls of your business are, you're not going to get anywhere. You can't land the airplane,
Yeah.
And then I think too, the other thing is you got to understand where you are in the cycle of business, right? Um, there's people and women and men and everyone, whoever. You have a business, but you have to understand, a business could be a lifestyle business that just pays your gas, your food, maybe for lunch, minimal stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a lifestyle business. And then there's the businesses that you scale into the big leagues, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's very important to understand where you are in that cycle. And some people don't want to grow a business, I'm of the opinion that some people just want to make an okay living and not report to anyone. And if that's you, hey, more power to you, right? But if you're
Mm-hmm.
looking to scale a business, the lessons learned here for me are I've been in very big league stuff, with the cosmetics. I mean, I was in Macy's, I was a vendor for Macy's and across the nation for Macy's. And the big lesson is you don't know how to read a P&L or a balance sheet or a cash flow statement, you're not going to get very far.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I started my cosmetic business, I actually had a CFO because I used to work for a consulting firm and I came from, so after college, I went to work for the global accounting firm, Arthur Andersen. And so I was in a very awesome position because Arthur Andersen's was a global firm. And so the who's who worked there, the who's who in finance worked there. And so I met a lot of great friends along the way. And one of them, she was doing all my books. I am a marketing person and I'm a creative. And back then, I'm talking 20 years ago, I had zero inclination, zero, to learn how a business worked in terms of P&L and balance sheet and cash flow and that kind of thing, cash in, cash out, right? And so I relied on a person like my very good CPA friend. But I would say that for most businesses, you don't have that friend. Learn it very quick, because you can either, that will make you or break you.
Yes, absolutely.
So it sounds like since childhood, you were motivated as a child by the big buildings, city lights, as you mentioned in your story. But what would you say keeps you driven and motivated currently to continue with your businesses and succeed?
Initially, if you asked me this question 20 years ago, because I've been in business 20 years, I would have said money. Like, I just wanted to, yes and no. Like, money always was like, for me, kind of like, I've always liked beautiful things. But I don't think in retrospect, if I actually asked myself that again, it was never money. It was just like, just to do better, like do better. The money came, like it just started coming to me. I mean, I was very young. When I started the cosmetic company, I was 23 years old. So I've, for 30 years, I'm going to be 53 years old. For 30 years, I have to say, I don't know if it's by design. I don't think about these things. I just go and do them. I'm an extremely good idea person, but I'm also an excellent executor. And so one of the things I think that motivates me the most, and I thought about this a few times, is what does my work do for others? Because I grew up in a very, very, very sad environment, where we sometimes didn't have money to eat, like literally. After my dad, I mentioned how I used to dispatch the weed and all that. My dad actually got arrested, and we were the kind of family that didn't have $3 to our name. And so there was a few days when we had no money, like zero. And so we had to go on public assistance for, I guess, what are they called? The
The food
food
stamps.
stamps
Yeah.
back in the day. Yeah. And so and we had this amazing Jewish landlord that came and said to my mom, you have these two little kids, because my sister was born at that time. You have these two little girls. I was older. Me and my sister are 10 years apart. Your two little girls, you don't work. How are you going to pay me my rent? And my mom said, we can't. We have to go to a homeless shelter. And he said, no, you guys can stay here until Roberto, that was his name, comes back. But then my dad was an illegal immigrant, and so we didn't know if he was going to get deported back then.
Yeah.
Long story short, he didn't. We got back on our feet, et cetera, et cetera. But I think growing up, I'm an empath. And so when you're growing up, you want to take every single poor person, every single homeless person, everyone you see that's struggling, you want to take them home. And for a long time, I really, really, really struggled with always feeling like I didn't deserve what I had. Like, I've done it since my 20s, like extremely well. And so by design or by accident, I don't know. I just say, thank you, God. I don't know what I've done to deserve this, but thank you. And I just keep going. Like, I don't think about what motivates me. What motivates me is my kids are fine. They're going to always do fine because they have me. And for me, more than anything, is I give them a lot of motivation. Like this is how you do it. This is how you do it. I've never really given my kids a lot of money. They've had to. My daughter is graduating from high school, and she doesn't have a lot of the beautiful things that some of those other girls have at her school. She has nice stuff, but I'm like, nope, you're not. You're not going to get a Louis Vuitton purse or a Range Rover when you're 17. No way. And so one of the things that I do for my children, what motivates me, is that I want to see them be extremely successful one day, but I want them to understand that money is not everything. Money
Yeah.
is a byproduct of what you give. And I have to say, I don't do this ever because I want anything in return. I probably give away a lot of my money to really special causes without expecting anything. And
Yeah.
somehow my business revenue just goes up and up and up every year. And so I think it's just the motivation is just to do well and like do well for others. And it just comes back to you.
Yeah. It's
I
that
love that. I
karma
say
coming
that all the
back.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
Me
mean,
too.
I mean, for me, I don't even think about that. I'm very involved with Homeboy Industries. I'm very involved with, I mean, I donated to the Children's Hospital for the heart area. My name's on their heart surgery area. I just donate. Like if it speaks to me and it's gonna do better for someone else and it's gonna help, Homeboy Industries is very dear to my heart because I'm a devout Catholic, and the Jesuit brothers, Father Boyle, he's Jesuit, but I have a special affinity for the Jesuit priests because their mission is to help very poor people, and
Yeah.
that's where my heart lies. Like, you know, you see poor people struggling, and you're like, not everyone has the same chance in life, you
Mm-mm.
know. And so when people say, oh, they just don't want to work, or they don't, I'm like, what if that child was neglected when they were little? They had no ways of ever thinking differently, or whatever the reasons. There's probably 5 million reasons why someone doesn't make it in life, right? There's also the part where I always believe that God sends certain people certain things to see how you will use them.
Yes.
And then
Firm
the other
believer in
part
that.
is that I'm extremely highly creative. Like the stuff I come up with, I own patents, design patents. I stuff that in the alcohol business, where when companies like Diageo and those big ones go, you did this, like seriously, like wow. It just speaks a lot to a talent that I have that God gave me. And then I always say, none of this is mine. I'm just the administrator. Like I don't ever feel like, look at everything I have. Like,
Yeah,
it comes and it goes. One day you wake up and you can have nothing.
absolutely.
And so I always view myself as the administrator, not the owner.
Yeah.
And you just keep going.
I guess it's that selfless service heart, right? Like you're just,
It doesn't matter. Like to me,
yeah.
people ask me, I turn down a lot of interviews. Like I'm surprised I'm even here today.
I know. Thank you.
I just turn down a lot of stuff because I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like, who cares? Like,
Yeah.
I don't need to show anybody that I'm out there talking. I mean, I just, for me, it's like, is my work meaningful and is it changing other people's lives? And I don't care about everything else. And, I can whip out a million awards I've won and everything, but I'm like, whatever.
Yeah. I
Doesn't
love it.
matter.
Love it. I mean, obviously everything that you've gone through, all the businesses you've built, and the way you carry yourself also, right? It comes from somewhere. So, I mean, can you share a valuable tip, tool, or resource with our audience that could potentially help them in whatever business endeavor that they're trying to grow?
For me personally, and this might not work for everyone, I will not start my day without prayer. I am a devout prayer person.
Hmm.
I'm a devout Catholic, and although my great grandfather's Jewish, I'm a devout Catholic. But I am of the opinion, number one, nothing in my opinion, because I know I respect everyone's religious beliefs and backgrounds, etc. But in my opinion, there is absolutely no way that I have gotten here without the grace of God. No
Yes.
way. Because I'm in a business where I can tell you it's extremely capital intensive. And I'm talking about the tequila business. Extremely cutthroat, male dominated, 100%.
Hmm.
But I'm also dealing with a monopoly. Like I'm talking your Diageos of the world, the Johnny Walkers of the world, the Brown Formans, the Pernod Ricards. Those rooms are not supposed to like have a seat there for me. And I have been
Hmm.
in every single one of those rooms. And you have to think, one, I do believe God has anointed me with something. I don't know what it is, but I know I have it.
Hmm.
And so I look at it as a tool. He gave me this, right? He says, I'm not going to just send you $1 million to your bank account, but I'm going to give you this. I want to see how you're going to use it. And so every day I ask myself that question, right? I wake up, I pray a lot. And then I ask God, dear God, today is not my day, it's yours. Where should I go with this? And by the way, here are the issues, right? Because as a normal business person running a very capital intensive business and deal business and that kind of thing, is where should I go with this today? Because it's not me. You have to show me where to go with this, and then the rest I can take care of, right? But I also live my life like when God sets it's showtime, there is not one person that's gonna cut for you. Like no one's gonna say cut in your
Yeah.
movie, right? And so I just live like that every single day. So that's what basically keeps me going, knowing that I have the faith of a mustard seed.
Yeah. I love that. And I think that every day you have to start every day with gratitude. There's no way you can go wrong. And there's no way that you can have a bad day if you start your day with gratitude. And and no joke, every day I wake up, the first thing I do is I step foot on the ground, reach up, look up and say, thank you, Lord, because I could have gone different. I could have not woken up. You know what I mean? I could have not
Absolutely.
been able to move when I woke up, something. So every day I think we're similar in that nature where I say thank you every morning.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, that's probably one of the things, I would say that's number one. And number two, I also think you have to know, like, really, am I good at what I'm doing? Because a lot of people do things that they're not good at and they suffer. And I don't believe in all that suffering. Like, why would you want to suffer? Like, God didn't ask us to suffer. People believe in suffering and no, God wants you to have everything amazing. He already suffered for us, right? And so for me, it's like, what am I really good at? And then when you are really good at something and you know how to execute, because there's people that come up with a million ideas and they can't execute one. And so for me, I'm an executor, I'm like, stick to one, stick to the plan. Like, it's not going to be easy, but if you're good at it and you never give up, business is not easy. Like, I don't know one person that has had a successful business in 2 years or 3 years. I always say it's a 10-year overnight success.
Yes.
When you start seeing someone or something or a brand everywhere, one, living in the age of social media, there's a lot of BS, right? Half of that is not true. Number two, if it's really a successful business, most people are not really talking about it constantly. Like, you don't need to, right? Number three, if it's something that you're seeing everywhere, like, oh, really, that brand is very successful, I would say that's 10 years. That's 10 years minimum.
Yeah.
Minimum.
And you hear that all the time, right? The 10-year overnight success
10-year
story.
overnight success.
Yeah.
I tell my son that all the time because he loves business too. But I'm like, if you're not willing to put in the time, here are the 3 or 4 rules, right, for business. You've got to have an incredible idea. It can't be me too. There's these trending things that one starts something and then all of a sudden everyone jumps on board and they're all, that's not a business. That's a lifestyle thing. Number two, you have to learn that if just because everyone else is doing it doesn't mean you're going to be good at it or that it's something that you should be doing. And it's okay not to have a business. In this age of social media, everybody wants to have a business, but they're not business people. And so the only way you scale, now, if you want it just for show, I mute those people. Gone. Bye. I don't want to see your crap, But if you really want a business, you have to know that most real business people, it takes a long time. And it takes a lot of no's, and it takes some sweat, blood, and tears, and it takes money, and it takes all the things that a lot of people are not willing to do. And so and I always say, if it's something that's going to be big and worthwhile, it's not going to be easy at all.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, you have to stick to the plan because a lot of people switch around. One day they have this business, the next day they have this business. And I'm like, that's not a business, girl. You just want to show.
You're trying to figure it out. You're trying to figure it out.
You're just busy, So, and some people, that's fine. Some people, have to change and do things differently and all that. But I think, that's part of the process. And so if you have a process that takes you in a million ways, that one day you may land in the business that you really want to scale, but it's going to take time and money and a lot of no's and all that stuff.
It sounds like you talk to God every day. You mentioned that, right? So you're moving on things that you feel is in his will and that wisdom that you have. So I really like that you mentioned that. And I wanted to thank you as well for coming on because like you said, you turned down a lot of interviews and someone of your caliber, never once did you ask us, well, how many followers is this going to, be broadcasted to or anything like that. So I really appreciate that. Real quickly, because I do want to respect your time, but can you speak on work-life balance and maybe just a quick tip that you would give? A lot of our audience are moms and wives, and they're juggling a lot. So any tip that you can help out with that?
Work-life balance. So I've never had it, to be quite honest. Also, when I started my first business, there was no such thing. I'm also a workaholic, so I don't know that I could offer a lot of advice. My kids are also older, but even when my kids were little, I've always traveled. I've had a life of 24 years of travel. So I've always had, my mom would help me with my older son, and then she would started helping me with my younger daughter. And then I have my husband who's a firefighter. He was a firefighter. He's retired now. He had the 3 days off, 3 days on. So we always found a way. But back in the day when my kids were growing up, work life balance wasn't a word. Like we
Mm-mm.
didn't talk about that. As generations, new generations and new things start coming up, and everybody's talking about work life balance. My opinion is that when you're growing a business, there's no such thing. So you have to just prioritize. Like, are your kids hungry? Feed them. Do they have a game? Then you better just shut down. But if you're gonna, try to grow a business, there's no such thing as halfway.
Mm-hmm.
And so my advice to some women is you can find the time because, for me, like now, I value sleep a lot. I've always been a very into sleep, right? So, but that's only been the last 6 years. Before that, I would work 18, 19-hour days because I would have to do certain things at night. So I think if you just figure out a way and stop thinking about, oh, there's got to be work life balance. Well, not really. There's just got to be, you need to do what you need to do.
Yeah.
I think we could get stuck on these words that a lot of society throws out, and then we're like, how do we adapt to that? Because everybody's doing work life balance. Well, you're seeing what they're telling you, right? Or you're seeing what they're posting. Because I think in this world, we all see things now through social media and all that stuff. And then these words get thrown out, and everybody kind of goes, oh, it's work life balance, work life balance. But tell me how, right? And so for me, I always say, just do what you need to. Like, if you are very worried that your kids are going to say, my mom wasn't there, then don't sleep and do your business. If you're able to do your business in the middle of the night, do it then and go with your kids. For me, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have that. Like, my kids know we were a business family.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not going to be at every game, like my son's name is Michael. Hey, Michael, I'm not going to be at today's game. Mommy's working. Good luck, baby. Daddy will be there. I don't have to be
Mm-hmm.
at every game. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not going to miss my kid's graduation, and I'm not going to miss, but I'm not going to go to every singing performance that my 4-year-old is
Yeah.
having.
Yeah.
I will be there. I will be at the shows. I will be at this. But if I have to go to a very important meeting, I'm not going to miss it to go see my 4-year-old sing again.
Yeah.
Like, I
Mm-hmm.
already have these pictures, and I'm going to tell her this was every single singing you had. She's not going to know the difference. And so if I
Yeah.
can be there, I would say 70% of the time, I was happy with that. If I was only there 20% of the time, my kids understood. So
Yeah.
the first thing for me was I would tell my kids the minute they had the understanding, babe, Mia, Michael, I run a business, okay? Your mom's a business person. I can't be at everything. Okay, mommy, bye.
It was that
That's the
simple
way
for
it
them.
was. I'm not going to, kill myself over I couldn't go up to the fit performance in 1 week. Like, no, I
Yeah.
already went to one. That's enough. Go. But
Yeah.
that's just the way and my kids are very happy. Like, they're not one of them remembers that I didn't go to every single performance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because they won't remember. You show them pictures of like, I don't even remember doing that. It's like, but you threw a fit because I told you I might not make it. And like, you have to be there.
See, my
They don't
kids would
remember.
know. They were like, okay, mommy runs a business. She can't be here. And they would tell their friends. Oh, my
Yeah.
mom has a business. She's traveling right now. And the kids were like, really?
Yeah.
And so for them, it was kind of like, I just told them, this is how we live. This is how we
Mm-hmm.
are. This is, your mom sometimes has to be gone for 4 days. Okay, mommy. But they had my husband, their dad, and they had my mom. And when they did it, it was just my husband, and he was, yeah, and it
Yeah. He
worked.
was.
My
He
kids
was
are
a.
older now, and they're now running. Like, my daughter, I know she's going to run a business, and my son too. He helps me. He works with me, and so he's learning the tequila business because one day he's going to run it. And so that's all they remember is that their mom like showed them where they're at now, and so that's all they remember.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to impact and purpose, I think you touched on something. When it comes to like leaving the business, right? Your son's going to eventually run it. How do you envision your business making a positive impact on your clients, your community, the industry, and more importantly, your family?
Well, we shall see. I always say, we can always plan and things don't work out that way. But the number one thing is that, we're all good. Even if we were to shut down today, we're good. You have to plan for that stuff.
Yeah.
Number two is that, if my son decides he likes the alcohol business, there's a lot of family-owned businesses that there's no successions, right? Because there's no succession plan and their kids don't want to be in the business. But I also think right now, my son has about 5 or 6 years where he has to prove to me that he can run the business, because I'm not going to hand over something that was so hard to build over the last 12, 13 years and see it crumble in the hands of someone that doesn't know how to run the business, whether he's my son or not. I also think one day, I might just replace myself. In fact, I'm a big proponent of this. I'm going to replace myself. I'm going to go hire a CEO. I don't want to be doing this. For me, I really enjoy the creative process and the sales process, but I don't want to be stuck running a business and the financials and all that. Like, I understand it, of course, forte, nor do I ever want to be the CEO running the day to day. And so for me, it's like, I will replace myself in the next 5 to 6 years. That's my goal. And then my son will learn the business. And if he's ready 10 years down the road or 12 or whatever it takes, if I hand over the business to him and he can prove he can run it and, keep it going, then yeah. But if not, I have no problem ever when I'm tired of this and selling.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like with mine, my property is in a trust and they're my grandsons. I want my business to eventually go towards my children's children and their children.
You
right?
have your trust and you put it there. Yeah.
It's not so much as what I'm building for me now. Well, yeah, I want to be comfortable, but it's later on, you want to plan for then what? Because we're not going to do this when we're 80 or 90, like then what?
Yeah.
So,
and so you plan for those stuff when you're young, and so I've already done all that. And then as the business just keeps growing, will I sell one day? Maybe not. I don't want to be run by a conglomerate. But if one day I decide I don't want to be doing this and I don't think I have a successor, then I sell it and I take all my money and I put it in my trust.
Yeah, I totally get that.
That's
For
awesome.
sure.
Well, I want to thank you again for joining us. You're on social media, right? Would you mind sharing your handle where our audience can follow you and kind of just be inspired by you? We have a lot of women that are looking for mentors and even just positive people to follow on social media. So would you mind sharing your handle with us?
Yeah. It's at Mina Tru
on
Instagram,
and
right?
We'll make sure we put it in the description. Yes, I'll make sure to share that also. Once again, thank you so much. And
You're welcome.
when I met you at a women empowerment brunch with insurance, and you had this very powerful statement that you said at the end of your presentation. And I would love if you would close out our interview with that statement that you made. That I still hold it. I wrote it down and I still look at it. It's very empowering. That's 3 things that are unstoppable.
So sure, I'd love to share 3 things that I think would be helpful to a lot of women. The rising of the sun, the setting of the moon, and a determined woman. Those are the 3 things that can never be stopped.
Absolutely.
And I hope that it's useful to some of you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Julie. And although we had this connection, I swear, Jackie, thank you for still staying on. I didn't want you to miss this at all. Yeah. Gotta take a trip
and
up
I'm
there.
still
But thank you once again for joining us.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Very nice to see you again, Sonia, and very nice to meet you, Jackie.
Nice to meet
And
you as
once
well.
again, guys, thank you for joining us. Catch our next episode on Women Insurepreneurs. We'll be on Spotify, YouTube, and thanks again, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Women Insurepreneurs. We hope you feel inspired and equipped for your journey in the insurance industry. Subscribe for more empowering conversations and connect with us on Instagram at Women Insurepreneurs. Make sure you join our meetup group so you don't miss any of our events. Until next time, keep shining and pursuing your dreams. Remember, your potential knows no bounds.